Hey folks, it's Marvin Cash, the host of the Articulate Fly, and we're back with the first East Tennessee Fishing Report of the year with Ellis Ward. How you doing, Ellis?
Doing well, Marv. How are you?
As always, just trying to stay out of trouble. Have you turned into an icicle yet?
Not yet. There is still time, and I might be dumb enough to wash some bucktail outside when it's 17 degrees. So, if you don't hear from me, that's what happened.
Yeah, well, you were a little late tonight. I was afraid maybe you'd gone musky fishing and fallen in.
Nope. Just in my kitchen, surrounded with boxes of different numbers corresponding to the grades, putting a ruler up against tails, heading them for a moment, and then putting them into a box. And I forgot what time it was.
So what kind of music do you listen to when you sort bucktail?
Oh, it depends. There's the typical playlist of, mid 2000s rap. I will say the Game has a new album that's awesome. And otherwise it's audiobooks and podcasts. I've been doing a lot of audiobooks recently with it's a lot of time on your own, not doing a whole lot, processing bucktail and fishing for muskie. So audiobooks can be a good way to break that up.
Yeah, as long as you didn't say Wilson Phillips, I figure you're okay.
Yeah, don't know who that is, so I think I'm okay.
There you go. So, to bring it back to fishing before everybody tunes out, obviously you got a ton of precipitation, and it is insanely cold on the western side of the Blue Ridge Mountains. Obviously you haven't been on the water. You're not going to be on the water in the super near future. But how do things look, when you kind of get back on the water after a little bit of a deep freeze?
Yeah, there's a very real possibility that I'll be fishing tomorrow, and if not tomorrow, then certainly Thursday, Friday, which just goes to what you said about the west side of the Blue Ridge Mountains. So the French Broad, the musky water that I fish is, today it was a high of 43 today there, and here it was 23 and windy and arid. And so there's a significant water boundary insulator in this little ridge between Johnson City and Asheville. So maybe just to escape some of the cold here, but as for musky fishing and in particular to the waters I guide on, the clinch and some of the waters in the Tennessee reservoir, the TVA reservoir system. I fished that Saturday, and it was a tough morning. Low 30s. It was probably 20s overnight. The water was 46 degrees, so it's we can have these nights in the 20s and days in the 40s, and I don't really anticipate, just looking at the forecast, that for the freestones with, if you're high up in the system, it's going to be back up into the 50s, and with no rain. And there's just been a lot of water in the systems for a good couple weeks here when it has not been, in the teens. So, and I'm just a bunch of context around probably a couple different ways to arrive at the same conclusion, which it's going to be, those temps are going to be dropping significantly over the next few days. As it relates to muskie, I've kind of already seen that wintering. They're finding their holes, and you're seeing more than one fish in certain areas. So I'm not sure it's going to change any behavior significantly, outside of slowing things down, keeping your fly in the water, working slower water, working deeper water. But it's kind of been a month or so doing that anyhow. And then, yeah, the next week to coincide with a good week or so, good couple of days of moon phase, this area is going to have some pretty fishy conditions and more water. So yeah, starting here in a few days when this cold snap gets out of here, it is going to be back on full steam.
Yeah, there you go. And how about your streamer for your big brown trout?
Yeah, man, there's too much to do, even when it's miserable outside. So it was somewhere between the musky trips last week. I would say the post-spawn bite is about as on as it can get. And we have gotten, like you said, a lot of precipitation. So water's good. And even, when it's this time of year, and this is for anyone listening who has considered the fall to be streamer fishing, and it is on freestones out west. I've heard it from close friends of mine. I know it's just the general industry mantra of streamer season. That's right now. It is right now to be fishing, musky sized flies. It's not required, but you can do it and fish are going to eat them. Um, pulling on the outside edge of what is realistic with that, but it's a time to, if you're learning how to streamer fish, you're going to get feedback. If you are wanting to hunt a big fish frog water, maybe see a few big ones and test your ability to just breathe for a second before you strip set. That's right now. And I'm not going to say it ends abruptly, but it sort of peters out. And that it kind of comes with the lake filling back up. We got more bugs in the system starting in March. January, February, early March, it can be the time to, if it weren't for the dry fly fishing and some of the days that can happen throughout that period of caddis hatch, stripers moving in, etc., I would say this is the best fishing of the year.
Yeah, very, very neat. And got a tactics question for you from a local Johnson City guy. His name's Logan Mooney, and he's asked questions before, and he wanted to get your thoughts on when you use a loop knot. Is it fly specific? Is it when you want to fish a specific cadence, or is it just kind of, whenever it, hits your fancy?
Sure. It's a good question. I'm going to answer that literally. So when I use a loop knot is every fly except for game changers. And mostly, the changers with a trailing hook, some of these changers, I have a single hook, but there's so many different articulation points, and I can see a scenario where a loop knot could add an extra something, but largely speaking, and in particular for trout, I'm fishing changers pretty fast, and I'm fishing them on 20, 25 minimum. I don't go down to 15 fishing those. And so some of it's for control. I don't like the thing spinning around and catching on a leader. And when you have a loop knot and, going down to 15 or God forbid, 12-pound fluoro, not for breaking purposes, but just for controlling your fly. If you shorten your leader up and go 20, 25 and, bigger fly, heavier fly, lots of articulations, 2 hooks, way spread out, I go clinch knot. And the loop knot, I guess another example would be for fishing small flies, like the peanut envy, something that I'll even tie them with tungsten heads. I know I mentioned that before, but that loop knot was something really jiggy, give the fly more freedom because there is less. You don't have that tight connection point. But if you're going down to 12 anyways, you got to start thinking about, I mean, if you're not comfortable with the loop knot or you're just simply more comfortable with clinch knot, kind of got to think about, it is a tungsten headed peanut envy. Is that mass, is its inertia, what it wants to do in the water, is that going to be impacted a lot by going loop knot versus clinch in the scenario where you're fishing 12 pound? Probably not. Once you start getting up into the 15 and smaller flies, yeah, I would say clinch knot. And then going up to 20 is, and that's kind of my home base for fishing larger flies. I'm doing loop knot on everything except for changers. And then final note on this one, if you're, I guess this is more of a note on the leader, but if you're wanting more action out of a fly, be it a hair bug, clouser, peanut, whatever, extend your leader and drop down. So instead of going, a couple feet of 30 to 20 or going down to 15, if you're fishing really spooky stuff, or even you want the fly to sink a little faster, if you're trying to get down, extend that 15 more. It's less of a rigid mass, and it is farther away from the more rigid, more massive line and 30-pound mono. And the way I like to, give the pressure test here is, imagine fishing a clouser minnow attached to 80-pound fluoro. It would look like it was being moved through the water on a stick. Now imagine fishing it on 6X. It would not be, you couldn't control it with 6X. So I would say that, going down to 12-pound fluoro would be sort of the 6X equivalent there, where you're kind of maximizing how much freedom of movement it has and still keeping it strong. I went off on a few tangents there, but I think important.
Yeah. And so you said everything except for changers. Are you talking about streamers, or do you also really like loop knots on nymphs and dry flies?
Great question. I will do loop knots on my trailing nymphs somewhat situationally, but if I'm going like size 20, we'll say size 26. This is kind of a weird pressure test, but size 26, and this is typically a dropper that is, or a second dry behind something you can actually see, like an 18 or a 20, but that they're not eating. So a little merger, super sparse, pheasant tail, a little zebra midge with some gink on it type thing. You want to feed a fish on the surface. Doing a loop knot in that scenario, unless you're really, really good at loop knots, that loop might be the way it sits on the water and catches the meniscus, just the surface tension of the line itself in front of the fly. That might be doing you more harm than good. And, it has a tendency to foul up. So generally speaking, loop knots, reserved for bigger flies, and in particular nymph. I mean, if you're running them in line as opposed to doing tags, loops can get a little funky. But doing a loop knot off of a tag, there is just, you can't get a better drift than that, and you can increase, fishing 4X where you would be fishing 5 or 6, as long as it's not too big to get through the eye of the the hook. But yeah, small loop mats on using 4X and 5X can really drop the amount of effort you need to put in on getting that drag free drift. And doing the tag deal it's almost a guaranteed free movement on every cast.
Yeah, well, there you go. And folks, we love questions on the articulate fly. You can email them to us or DM us on social media, whatever's easiest for you. And if we use your question, I will send you some articulate fly swag, ordering some new swag here very soon. And Ellis and I will put our heads together for what kind of cool drawing thing we're going to do for 2024. And, Ellis, since you were out sorting bucktails, I imagine you're getting ready to drop a big chunk of bucktails on the market. You want to let folks know what to expect?
Yeah, we're going to stick with kind of do what I did last time, which is a bit of a staged, lots of naturals. And so a lot of whitetails and some of the grade 1s and 2s that will be gone very quickly. I'll have these up on what day is it? I know it's Tuesday.
It's the 16th.
Okay, I'll have these up on the 18th.
Well, there you go. And, folks, remember that we're working on building out our Patreon community in 2024. And so we've got 2 tiers of membership. There are more, but we have 2 tiers. And at one tier, you get 10% off of Ellis's bucktails. But there's another tier where you get a $100 guide trip credit every year. So great way to support Ellis. Great way to support the show. Link is in the show notes. You should check that out. And, Ellis, I know you're booking and doing all that kind of good stuff. You want to let folks know where they can find you and all that kind of good stuff?
Yeah. So website is elliswardflies.com. Best way to reach me and ask about trips or book a trip is calling or texting at 513-543-0019. And Instagram captures a little bit of what I got going on, which is at Ellis Ward Guides.
Well, there you go. Well, listen, folks, I want to wish everybody a happy new year. Happy 2024. Happy New Year, Ellis.
Hey, happy New Year, Marv.